She asked good questions. That was the first thing I noticed about Priya. Not her credentials, which were solid, but the quality of her questions. She asked things that showed she had prepared. She absorbed answers and followed up precisely. She took notes in a particular way. Shorthand, organized, the method of someone who has developed a system and trusts it. I remember thinking in our third session together that she was going to be very good at this work. I was training her to take my job. I did not know that yet. My manager had introduced her as a new team member who would be learning client management before being assigned her own portfolio. He asked me to bring her up to speed on my accounts, all 6 of them. With particular attention to Callaway, Callaway was our largest client. I agreed without hesitation. I like teaching. I am good at it. I believed that helping newer colleagues develop was part of what experienced people were supposed to do. My name is Kate Morrison, and I am 35 years old, and I have been at Stratton Consulting for 7 years. 7 years of the particular work that client management involves, the relationship building that happens in the margins of formal meetings, the specific knowledge of what a client needs before they have fully articulated it, the accumulated trust that comes from years of consistent delivery and honest communication when things go wrong. The Callaway Group had been my account for 4 of those 7 years. My primary contact there was a woman named Susan Park, the company's chief operating officer. Susan was the kind of client who had high standards and communicated them directly. She rewarded people who met those standards with the specific loyalty of someone who has found what they were looking for and does not see the point in changing it. Susan and I had developed a working relationship that was professional and warm, the kind of combination that produces good work over long periods. She knew my communication style. I knew her priorities. When something went wrong on a project, which always happens, she called me directly, and we handled it directly. It did not become larger than it needed to be. My last performance review noted that the Callaway account was my strongest relationship. My manager agreed. He said my work with Susan Park was a model for how the firm approached client management. 6 weeks after that review, he introduced me to Priya. The 11 weeks of training were thorough because I am thorough when I do things that matter. I walked Priya through each account, the history, the key contacts, the active projects, the nuances of each client relationship that do not appear in briefing documents because they are the product of time and attention, not formal process. I introduced her to clients on calls, framing her as a colleague who would be supporting the accounts going forward. I introduced her to Susan Park in week 7, a scheduled check-in that I had arranged to include Priya as a learning experience. Susan was professional and warm the way she always was. She asked Priya 1 or 2 questions before returning her attention to the project discussion. After the call, Priya said Susan was impressive. I said she was. I said she was also one of the most direct clients I had ever worked with. I said the relationship required consistent follow-through above everything else. Priya nodded. She wrote something in her notebook. I found out what was actually happening on a Tuesday in week 12, not from my manager, from a colleague named James who sat 2 desks away. He had overheard a conversation he was not meant to overhear. He came to my desk at 4:30 with the specific discomfort of someone delivering news they wish they did not have. He said Priya had been brought in as my replacement. He said my manager had been planning to let me go at the end of the quarter. A cost-cutting measure framed internally as a restructuring. My manager had wanted Priya fully trained before the announcement. I thanked James. I said I appreciated him telling me. I waited until he returned to his desk. Then I called Susan Park. I want to be precise about why I called Susan directly, because it is the decision that required the most thought. I did not call her to complain. I did not call her to ask for intervention. I did not call her to create pressure on the firm through the client relationship. I called her because Susan Park was a person who communicated directly. I believed she deserved to know that a change was being planned that would affect her account. I also called her because I had built that relationship over 4 years. I believed, without being certain, that she would want to know who had built it before she was asked to transfer it to someone else. She answered on the second ring the way she always does. I told her there was something I wanted to tell her before she heard it from the firm. I told her I had recently learned that I was likely being let go at the end of the quarter. I told her Priya, whom she had met on the recent call, had been brought in as my replacement. I told her I was not calling to ask for anything. I was calling because I thought she deserved the information directly. There was a brief silence. Then Susan said, "Kate, I already asked for you back." I did not immediately understand what she meant. She explained. 3 days earlier, before James had told me anything, before I had any knowledge of what was being planned, Susan had sent an email to my manager. She had been told that account transitions were being planned as part of a restructuring. She had been told this in a routine update call that I had not been on. Her response, sent within 24 hours, had been direct. She wanted to know if Kate Morrison would remain on the Callaway account, because if not, she would need to discuss whether the account itself would remain at the firm. My manager had not told me about this email. Susan said she had not received a satisfactory response. She had been planning to follow up. I said I appreciated her telling me. She said, "You built this relationship, Kate. I'm not interested in starting from scratch with someone I met for 20 minutes because it's convenient for someone else's spreadsheet." She said she would be making a call to the firm's managing partner that afternoon. I thanked her. I said I would follow up with her once I had more clarity on my situation. I ended the call. I went to my manager's office. I knocked. I sat down across from him without being invited to. I told him I had spoken with Susan Park. I told him I was aware of both the planned restructuring and her email. He was not composed the way he usually was. He had the specific discomfort of someone who has been managing two conversations separately. Someone who has just discovered they have converged. He said the situation was more complex than I might be aware of. I said I was sure it was. I said I would like to understand my options going forward. Specifically, whether my position was being eliminated. If so, what the firm's process was for that notification, what my severance would look like. He said he would need to discuss it with the managing partner. I said I understood. I said I would wait to hear from him. Susan's call to the managing partner happened that afternoon. I was not on it. What I know of it came from the managing partner directly. He called me into his office the following morning. He said the firm was not in a position to eliminate a role that was directly tied to a client relationship of Callaway size. He said the restructuring would be applied differently. He said my position was secure. He said almost as an aside that my handling of the situation had been noted, that I had communicated with the client professionally, that the client's response had been informative. I went back to my desk. Priya was reassigned to a different team. I was not involved in that decision and do not know the specifics. What I know is that she was not let go. She was given a different set of accounts to develop, which seemed to me the appropriate outcome for someone who had been placed in a difficult position by decisions made above her. I do not hold what happened against Priya. She had been told she was coming in to learn and develop. The decisions about what that development was preparing her for were not hers. The Callaway account remains mine. Susan and I had a call last month to review the upcoming year's work. She asked at the end of the call how I was finding things at the firm. I said I was finding them clarifying. She laughed. She said that was one way to put it. It is the most accurate way I know. 7 years of relationship building produced one email from Susan Park that changed the outcome of a decision made about me without my knowledge. 7 years of consistent delivery, honest communication, follow through on the things that matter. That is not a strategy. It is simply how I work. And when someone finally threatened to take that away, my client made one phone call. And that phone call changed everything. Because I had not been building a relationship with a client. I had been building a reputation. And reputation, once built, is the only thing that truly matters in any room you walk into.